Hello and welcome to In the Making, a series of conversations from North Bennett Street School where we connect with a range of new voices, fields, and perspectives. Before we get into our conversation, we want to thank the many supporters that make our programs possible, including the Massachusetts Cultural Council and our partners in craft. Thanks for joining, everyone. My name is Kristen Odell. I am an NBSS staff member and host of In the Making. You can't see the whole scope of this, but we're currently sitting at Jonathan Ota's workbench in a shop space here in Leominster that he shares with 3 other graduates of North Bennett Street School from his class. And we'll meet them later. They're kind of hiding behind in different areas. We've actually closed them off in the closets for this program. They're so obnoxious. So first and foremost, thank you for having me into your space, John. We really appreciate it. It's a pleasure. We're going to be talking about your journey from combat veteran to using your hands to heal and create this thriving woodworking business that we'll get into talking about as well. And before we jump into that, I just first and foremost, I want to show and tell you that we appreciate your service and your sacrifice to fighting for us.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay.
We're here at your workbench in Leominster, and the story of this program is healing through hand tools and hand skills and making things with your hands. And so start us off in 2001. What happened in 2001?
I graduated high school in the spring, and then I went into the Marine Corps, and I was served out at Camp Pendleton in California with 1st Battalion, 5th Marines Charlie Company. From there, we got 3 tours to Iraq. We did the initial invasion into Baghdad, the first invasion of Fallujah, and then ran sustainment and stability operations in Ramadi. So he's completely passed out.
I don't think everybody can see Link, but he's sleeping here. So you were 17, like 17 and a half, you said. Yeah.
So right out of high school,
yeah. And I've heard you say before that it was just sort of, right away. And then back in, you did how many tours?
3.
You did 3 tours, and it was just sort of in and out nonstop. You never really had a moment to just pause.
No, so I joined in August 27th. So I was right before 9/11. So I was in boot camp when the Twin Towers were hit. So, initially it was, I just wanted to serve my country, and then it turned into like a whole new, everything just got kind of more serious and pretty crazy at that point. Yeah. But from boot camp, I was actually supposed to, well, not boot camp, there's a school after the School of Infantry. We were supposed to go right over to Tajikistan, but we ended up getting different orders. So I ended up out in Camp Pendleton. But yeah, it was a very fast pace because we did a 6-month workup to get ready to go to Iraq, but we didn't really know we were going until they gave us 24 hours notice that we were actually shipping out. And we did 7 months the first tour, came home for 6 months, trained again with new guys, another 7 months, and then the third tour, because I was getting out at that time, I only did half of it. So it was a weird one because it felt awkward leaving everybody, but it was either I leave early or I sign up for another 4. So
that was the last tour?
The last tour.
Right. I remember you saying this, that it was a little, it was a very different experience the last tour that you did, because the same guys that you had been with before.
The first 2, yeah. It was only a couple of us that stayed. Like there was a bunch of us, but the ones that I was like really close with, they all got, they were to different units, or they re-enlisted, so they went elsewhere. And yeah, it was weird not being there with those guys, but it was, we did it.
So what made you join the Army initially at 17 and a half?
Marines.
But, sorry. Marines.
I don't know. I mean, it was, I wasn't the best student, a little unguided, I guess. I got myself into a good amount of trouble. My father was in the Marines, so it's kind of, I can't remember a point in my life where I was like, I'm going to be a Marine just like my dad, but I think that had a lot to do with it. He never really talked about it much, but we'd see his uniforms and he'd bring up some stuff about Vietnam every now and then, but it's just something I always wanted to do. That's, where I ended up. And, yeah.
And then when you came back after your third tour, After Fallujah was the last one, right?
No, Fallujah, it was Baghdad, Fallujah, and then Ramadi.
Got it. After
Yeah.
Ramadi, you came back and what happened?
So Ramadi was, I mean, it was, to kind of break it down into stages. Like the first tour, we were fighting the regime. So we were fighting Saddam. And we're fighting Saddam and his regime. So it was like we'd show up to a fight and, our military had already, planes and artillery had already wiped out a lot of stuff. So we'd show up and the opposing force was like, we're not fighting these guys. So until we hit Saddam City, that was a big battle. And then obviously Baghdad was a big push too. But it was kind of, we knew what we were getting into. The second tour, we did Operation Vigilant Resolve in Fallujah, which was, I don't know if you remember when those contractors were killed. So we were the force that went in after that. And that was fighting, it wasn't fighting the regime anymore. It was fighting, whatever guerrilla warfare there was. And then Ramadi, you figured that was almost 3 years after the initial invasion. They didn't want us there anymore. So
Right.
the feel was different. The people were different. The fighting was different. It wasn't, we're going up against an army. We're going up against people that blend into society. So it was a lot of IEDs, a lot of suicide bombers, vehicle bombers. So usually, like the first two tours, I'm infantry, so we'd be on the ground on foot. We were a helo company, which we didn't really fly any birds over there. But the third tour, they split. Usually how a infantry company is set up is 3 line platoons and then 1 weapons platoon. But so they ended up making 4 line platoons, and they made the 4th platoon, which was my platoon, into a mobile unit. So we just, every time a foot patrol went out, the mobile would go out, and we would do like satellite patrolling. So it was a lot of explosions. We lost a lot of guys. It was a rough one. But the weirdest part about it was I got out halfway through. So halfway through the tour, I had to leave, all the guys I trained, and I went home, and it wasn't like welcome back. It was like, all right, you're getting out. So after leaving Ramadi, and the last day we were there was a big day. That's the day that our company commander and a couple other guys were killed. So within 30 days of that, I was home.
So that's what you're saying, is that you're there and you're in the midst of being blown up, and then all of a sudden there's no celebration. You're just home.
Yeah, and there's like no real guidance. Like they do what's called, I think, temp and tap. So they they'll tell you, go to the VA, do this, do that, but there wasn't like any, you're gonna have these feelings, like things are gonna be screwed up, your life isn't gonna be the same.
Yeah.
You're going to battle with anxiety and depression and, all this paranoia and all this stuff. So you kind of just go home not knowing what to do, really.
So I want to go back to before you joined the Marines. Was there any sort of hand skills based activity in your life that you already knew about?
Not really, no.
Yeah.
I mean, like I had the normal typical teenager jobs, bagging groceries, pumping gas, working in a cafeteria at an old age home. I did a lot of roofing and stuff with one of my buddy's fathers. He was a firefighter at a roofing company on the side, but there really wasn't like a huge drive to do anything carpentry wise.
Things, yeah.
My dad, I mean, he was a hobbyist woodworker. There's a lot of, clocks and picture frames and mirrors and stuff that we have from when he was building stuff, but this isn't where I imagine myself.
Right.
Like, in a million years. So.
Right. So then jump forward to 05 when you came home and you're in this environment, and then all of a sudden you're back home and you don't know what to do. What were you experiencing?
The first year, it was just, I never really left that combat mode. So it was always, high alert.
You mentioned going to dinner with your friends, and what happened in that environment?
Well, when we came back from the first tour, we went out with a couple of my buddies. They were married at the time. And we're all sitting in a restaurant. It's like you go 7 months hearing the same sounds, same voices, same smells, same everything, to all of a sudden you have what is normal now. For me, I can just go to a restaurant, but it was like chaos because we were all just sitting there like, what is happening?
Just hearing like regular everyday
like
sounds,
silverware and other
and
voices, and there were no women where we were. It was just all guys. So it's like you're hearing women's voices, you're smelling different things. It was a different experience, it just kind of plunged you back into it felt foreign, you know, even though I lived in that society for 17 years, you know, it felt weird being back in like the normal places.
Of course. I mean, well, the sounds that you're listening to when you're, you know, on tour, you're like, your life is on the line. So you're hearing those sounds in a different way.
Yeah. So everything is, you know, is a threat. You know, you're always prepared for whatever's going to happen, and you kind of place yourself in whatever environment you're in to be in the best strategic position. But I don't, you know, I did that a little bit, but I'm now, you know, through everything I've gone through in therapy and whatnot, it doesn't really bother me much anymore. Yeah.
So then let's go back to the '05 when you came back this last time, and what were the really tough things that you were experiencing?
It was a lot of nightmares, a lot of anxiety and paranoia, and you know, the last tour we did, there was a lot of roadside bombs. So, you know, like you're driving down the street and then you see a bag, and you know where you are, but you don't know where you are. It just, there's a lot of intrusive thoughts, I guess you'd say. So that was one of my biggest struggles was, you know, I always expected the worst, you know, I'd planned for the worst no matter what I was doing. It's like I'm going to work and I'm thinking someone's following me, so I'd drive different ways to get to work every day.
And did you go, at that point, did you go to a VA hospital or vet, or is that when you discovered the vet center?
Well, it was about 3 years out. I had a real bad flashback. My buddy Weichert was killed in Afghanistan. He had joined the army after we got out of the Marines. So I was going through like a really difficult time, and I went to the Worcester VA. It's like an outpatient clinic. And I went in for like to speak to the psychologist, and I'm like, hey, this is what's happening to me. I explained everything, and she laughed and said, it looks like you're bipolar. So I left, and you know, that was it for me for a while.
Because you knew that you weren't.
Yeah, I mean, I knew. Like, I guess the best way to explain, like, I've always been myself. Like, this is who I am. Like, if you had met me, you know, say 10 years ago, there's still this, you know, but it's like a black cloud follows you around. But you know, 10 years ago it was more like fog. It wasn't above my head. It was just surrounding me. So I was very angry. I was very depressed. You know, super high anxiety or whatever. I mean, if you talk to my wife, we've been married, it'll be 10 years this year. I mean, she's almost left me a dozen times, you know, so the last few years have been pretty amazing. It's been very, very life-changing for a lot of different reasons, not just crafts, but.
Yeah. So when you went to the VA and I know you've said this before, that it was very sort of medication forward, and that was not the route that you wanted to take.
No, I didn't. After that experience with that psychologist, I called it quits. Like, I figured, all right, I'm on this, you know, I'm going to do this on my own. And I didn't have another, I mean, you know, things were screwy, whatever. I drank a lot. I did, you know, a lot of drugs, trying to, you know, get sleep and whatnot. But it was Memorial Day weekend. I had another outburst. And this is when I was dating my wife. And she said, you know, you either got to get some help or you're never going to see me again. Whatever, I'll never see you again, because it's just the way it is. Yeah. And I bumped into a guy that I served with. He was in a different company, same battalion, but we went over together. He's like, hey, have you heard of the Worcester Vet Center? I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Never heard of vet centers.
Legitimately, it was 5 minutes from where I lived at the time. So it's like I drove by it every day. I didn't know what it was. But I went there, and it didn't feel like walking into the VA. It felt like you were walking into like this sterile place where they're just going to shoot you with needles and, you know, fill you with medicine. But the woman I met, Colleen, she, like, I finally felt like somebody like understood. So, you know, the vet centers are different because they were founded by Vietnam vets. So it's not the VA. They're affiliated with the VA. They get government funding. They do all that, but there's no medication, you know, strictly mental health. They can access your VA records, but the VA can't access your mental health records without authorization. So it's a very different entity. But you know, it's kind of like the North Bennett Street School. Like, you walk in there and the receptionist is super nice. Like, you felt like everybody really. Lillian. Yeah, exactly. You know, you just felt like everybody wanted, you know, to help you and wanted you to be there. So it was. Yeah. You know, from there it was twice a week for a while, and did a lot of group therapy, which I met some really cool guys.
And isn't that where you had sort of like a exposure to creative work as healing?
Yep.
And so how did that happen?
So the therapist I was with for about 5 years, she moved up to New Hampshire, and some new guy came in, and I started seeing him. And his big thing was he's a musician and he's an artist, so he paints and he
Also a
creates
vet?
music. Yeah,
Yeah.
he was an army vet. I think he was a ranger, I want to say. Whatever. Anyway, he thought, to heal from PTSD through creativity. Like he called creativity a stream. So you had to maintain your stream, remove the blockages, just keep it flowing. So as long as you kept it flowing, so he's like, what do you like to do? I'm like, I like hunting, I'm a carpenter, I like working with my hands. And he found the North Bennett Street School and he's like, how about we do this? I'm like, all right, sure. I'd never heard of the place, which is kind of crazy now that I've been there. But so he signed me up, and I was like, I think the next day, Rob O'Dwyer called me. He's like, hey, you want to come to the school? I'm like, all right. So, for me, and this is politics are kind of crazy. So like, I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, man, I'm gonna go out there, get beat up by Antifa or whatever. It's just for, I live somewhat in the country now.
Right,
so,
going into Boston.
it was a big change because I was, I was a residential carpenter for 5 years, and then I switched over to a commercial super. So I worked in Boston, but I drive into a job site and get out and do my thing and then leave. So, getting on the train every morning.
Very in town.
Oh yeah. Like walking from the train station to the school. It's like, it was big. And it was a lot on my wife because, it went from her dropping the kids off in the morning and then me picking them up in the afternoon because I was able to work my schedule that way, to her dropping them off, picking them up, making dinner, because I wouldn't get home till almost 7 every night.
So she made huge sacrifices to.
If it wasn't for her, I wouldn't have been able to do this. No, she's awesome.
But it was at that point, right? I mean, isn't that what the story of that is that you were at a point, it was like do or die now.
Well, it's the same, like when I worked with my brother, it was, our relationship, it became very toxic. So we didn't see things the same way. And I mean, me for the most part, like I'm a pretty giving person. Like I'm not trying to screw anybody out of anything, or, so that he had a different mentality than I did. So it was affecting my personal life. Me and my wife talked. Well, she wasn't my wife at the time, but so then I switched over to commercial, and it was great for a few months, and then it just turns into like a just get it done rat race type of mentality, and I was being overworked and I didn't like it anymore.
So it wasn't contributing to any sort of healing or anything. It was
definitely making things worse for sure.
Yeah.
But I didn't think I'd ever be a furniture maker, but going to the school definitely opened my eyes.
Yeah. So one thing we've talked about before, and for our guests, I mean, one of the things that makes me feel so close to you and your shopmates here, Emily and Mike and Jeff, is that we all sort of came into the community at the same time.
Yeah.
And so I think of you up in cabinet and furniture making space, coming from combat, coming from working in sort of the impersonal construction realm.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you're in this beautiful sunlit space and you're surrounded by just sort of the consistency of your bench, your tools, working on a process and a project, and being surrounded by your pals that are like always going to be there.
Cool. Yeah, it was definitely different. Because not to sound uncultured, but growing up in Worcester, I went to inner city school, so it was very diverse. But then I went to the Marines and construction, so it was basically the same people for the past 15 years. And when I got out to the school, I still like, I thought it was a cult. Like, why is everybody so happy out here? And it really took a while to like break that down and start realizing like everyone was actually really wanted to help you. Like, hey, when you have it, I'll help you right now. And you're one of the people that would just put your stuff down and whatever, it's good to be around people that really care, and like they're passionate, or they really enjoy their job, or, it's just, I guess if you go to like a college, there's all the different courses you have to take just to get one degree. But when you go to North Bennett, if you're going there for jewelry, all you do is jewelry. If you're going there for furniture, all you're doing is furniture. So everyone who's there really wants to be there. It's not, it's not just, it's
certainly an active choice to be there. Yeah.
So it was cool. It definitely opened my mind to a lot of different things.
One thing that you just said, and you've said before, is it opened your mind to being surrounded by people who want to see you succeed.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. That's huge.
That's huge.
Oh, big time.
Yeah.
I mean, from the students to instructors, I mean, it's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even now, I mean, I've been out of school since 2019. I'm doing this. You know, I go back into the school. Dan Fay he's doing some carvings for me. Chris Plouffe, which is Ann's husband, he's right down the street at his shop. And
Also a vet.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like it's the community, as long as you stay tapped into it. Like I've noticed some of the students that graduated with me, they just kind of, you know, went off and didn't really keep ties with the school, but the community is amazing as long as you keep your name out there, and you know, just remember who's important and who was important to you while you were there. I mean, you're cool.
Me?
Yeah, you're one of the cool ones. Yeah.
Thanks, John. I want to just sort of go into the healing portion of this, and how, you know, you've been in very dark places before, and you actually wrote a letter to Congress, right, about the vet centers and supporting vet centers, and you were invited to read it.
No, I didn't. Yeah, they didn't.
It didn't happen, but anyway, you were asked to. And one thing that you spoke about in there is that some of your lowest moments, you felt like you were looking up at the roots.
Yeah.
Am I
Yeah,
saying that
up at the
correctly?
roots rather than down at the flowers.
Yeah. And I think about that and how vastly different it is on the other end of the spectrum where you are now, where in learning to make things and have this sort of niche business using your hand skills, you have a future to view and something to look towards. I mean, can you speak about the opposing nature of those two things?
I mean, you know, the last couple of years, like when I tell people, like, I'm really happy. 5 years ago, 6 years ago, I tell you I'm happy, but that's just, you know, that mentality, fake it till you make it. I was a very depressed person. Like I wouldn't, you know, I lost a lot of friends, you know, along the way from just not talking to them. I mean, while I served, we lost a lot of guys. We lost almost the same amount to suicide since we've been out. But so I never really looked forward. You know what I mean? It was always just what's in front of me, what I got to do now. You know, how do I get to the next step? It was never like, oh, in 10 years, this is where I think I'm going to be in 5 years, 2 years. None of that existed. So, I mean, something as simple as, like, we have a cabin up in Maine that we go to on vacation, and up until the last few years, like every time we'd be getting ready to go, I'd lose my mind for whatever reason. It was stress or whatever it was, I'd go crazy. But now it's like, I can't wait to get back up there. And like where everyone, you know, the whole family is there. It's her side of the family. So they're great people. And it's just like I'm not, like the black cloud is still there, you know, the anger can come out from time to time, or, you know, some memories like last year, the year before, which it's kind of crazy how it all happened. I don't know if I should get into it, but
you can.
It was so the last tour I was on, the last day was supposed to be my last mission, and I was supposed to go on it. One of the guys that he was actually from Massachusetts, he was killed in that mission, and it was supposed to be me with him, but I wasn't. And we were sitting here one day, and it was like right around the same time of year. So like for me, I notice like things get rough. Not the last couple of years have been pretty good, but things get rough during certain times of the year, like the anniversaries and stuff. I was sitting here, and it's just a huge explosion. A truck blew up down the street. You know that bridge?
Yeah.
Like a semi truck blew up.
Oh my gosh.
So it's like I'm sitting here, and you know, Jeff's a Marine. He was over in Iraq too, so there's like a little bit of comfort level with that. But like I'm seeing smoke billowing up. I'm like, what the hell? I'm like walking down there. Like I started feeling like I was going to go into a flashback. Like I was all tingly. You know, things started getting a little blurry. So I came back, and I remember driving home that day, and some guy had flicked a cigar out the window, and it was in the middle of the highway spinning, and I could see like the embers on it, which is, you know, it just showed me that my like hypervigilance was just so keyed in. I'm like, this is crazy. And, you know, if that had happened to me, you know, 6 years ago or whatever, I probably would have went into like a real deep tailspin. But with this kind of work, you know, maintaining with therapy, you know, my wife is a saint. She's, you know, so I was able to recover from that pretty quickly.
Well, and Link, of course.
Yeah, and my Frenchie.
Your smelly dog.
But, you know, it's like, if I wasn't here doing this, You know, if I didn't take the steps that I took to get to this point, I don't think I would be. I think I'd probably be divorced. I'd probably be drunk or in jail, or, you know, swinging a hammer somewhere on a construction site, you know, being miserable about my life. But, you know, I never, like that phrase, everything happens for a reason. I never really liked it because, you know, and if you're a veteran and you're listening to this, and, you know, a lot of people will say, you know, they died for a reason, you know, you're here for a reason. But in the beginning years, like, I couldn't get out of my own way. So, like, I'm here for a reason. I can't even, you know, I can't even get out of bed. I can't do this, you know, I'm just useless, wasteless, you know. But now, like, I don't think things happen I think they just happen. And as long
Well,
as
you
you're
do the work too.
right. But if you're like, the fact that I hit this low point, had a different counselor, he was big into creativity. Like, I've refinished a couple bureaus or something before I went to school, but when Rob was like, "Hey, just send me your portfolio, your work," I'm like, I didn't have any.
Yeah.
Like a coffee table, you know.
Yeah.
And but, you know, as long as you're wise enough to see opportunity and just go for it, you know. And when you get it, you got to put your everything into it. You know, there's a lot of people you'll see that they just kind of go through the motions, but if you want something, you really have to, like, put all that energy out there, and I think it works.
Yeah, I mean, something you and I have in common, I've always known this, is that we you know, you're the guy out there at 5 a.m, snow blowing, wrecking your neighbor's morning.
Yeah.
But point is that we're, you know, get up, get out there.
Right.
You have to do the work.
Yeah.
You know, if you want something to, you know, change or happen,
Absolutely.
do the work.
Yeah. And even if you have to fake it. I mean, I did it for a while. I didn't think I'd ever get through it, but, you know, somebody said it at some point, you know, fake it till you make it. And I just put a smile on my face and, you know, go at it.
And then that smile becomes real.
Yeah, it
right?
does. That's what, like, when I talk about the last few years of my life and how happy it's been, it's just, it seems weird to me, you know. And other people, like, they look at you like, okay, dude, you're like in your you're almost 40. You've never been happy before? I'm like, not that I can remember of, but it's
And I'm sure, you know, of course, we are not, you know, therapists, and of course, that's not true for, you know, everybody who deals with depression or severe depression. But it, you know, there is science behind that. If you, you know, use your muscles to smile, it might become a more permanent activity for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. You just, and, you know, like, the school, this work, it obviously helped me very much. But what really helped me, I mean, was therapy. It was. Because I'd notice, like, I'd start feeling good, I'd start doing better, and I'd stop going to therapy. And then 3 months later, my wife is like, I'm done. Like, I'm packing my stuff and I'm out. All right, so I go back to therapy, and, you know, consistency with mental health, physical health, is just as important as, like, keeping your tools sharp. You know, it's the only way you're going to perform to the level you should be performing at, is if you take care of yourself. You know, the roots of everything needs to be, you know, you need to water plants for them to grow. So you can't let up on the simple stuff, you know, routines and whatnot. But
yeah. I mean, it sounds like you jumping into North Bennett Street School is a bit of that self-care, right? You said this, the first thing you've done really that was like
for myself,
solely to heal you. Yeah.
Because I mean, my wife is a counselor, a guidance counselor at inner city Worcester school. So she's, you know,
she's seen it.
Oof,
yeah.
She's fine. She's done.
Yeah.
But, Ricky's kids are here. So
yeah.
He's barking at them.
Can I ask you about so you were 17 and a half when you joined the Marines, and you know, at that age, and then you got out at 20, was it 21?
Yeah.
Roughly?
Yeah, right around 22, I think, yeah.
So being, you know, going into that environment right away, you're at that age, your mind is not even
developed
prepared or developed to cope or handle anything, but
I know what you're saying. Yeah.
So,
you know, when kids go off to college, like, they're learning who they are, you know. So that developmental stage is like, you're taking risks, you're going out, you're meeting new people, you're partying, you're seeing, you know, where you fall in life. When, you know, you're a veteran right out of high school, when you're right out of high school into the military, that part of you is transformed. It's like they make it the way they want it to be. You know, they want you to perform. So I missed out on that. So I think a lot of trouble that veterans have is they get out and they're like, why isn't your shirt tucked in? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's
the
like,
coping
yeah,
skills aren't there because
right.
you didn't have the opportunity to grow them.
Right.
And so I want to, I want to connect that to when you learn hand skills and you're working with hand tools, and especially the methods at North Bennett where it's one step at a time.
Yeah.
I think of that as that thing that you missed. You
Yeah.
know, you're learning how to just like handle this one incremental problem until you have all of those solved to get to this one larger problem.
Right.
Is that true for you?
Yeah.
I mean, making a piece of furniture, for instance,
yeah.
when you were a student, did it teach you those things that you may
did.
not have?
Well, I think part of it was just the camaraderie. You know,
Yeah.
it's like you could say, hey, I got this going on. Like you'd have Emily, she'd help us out. And so it's nice to be able to bounce ideas off of people and whatnot. But it's just sharpening your skills. I mean, it's like, I think with the military or, anything like that, you just practice one thing all the time. Your end goal is to be good at, fighting in war. So it's like for making furniture, your end goal is to make furniture. So there's not like a whole broad, like, you really don't need to know. I mean, you need to know a lot, but
no,
Yeah.
to your point, you're and that was the other beautiful thing about the healing in, sitting at this bench, you're focusing on this one thing
Yeah.
that ends up being a beautiful, something beautiful.
That's it. I had an interview with a magazine, and she was asking me the same thing. And it's, for me, one of my biggest problems, like I said earlier, was the intrusive thoughts. Like I get lost in these cycles of thinking that they weren't healthy. But when you're doing this, it's like, if you're sharpening a chisel, if you move your hand the wrong way once, you ruin everything you've just done. So you have to be laser focused. Like you're working with 7.5 horsepower table saws. I mean, every day, you can have a life altering event, right?
Yeah.
So you see, like the first time we went to the lumber yard with Dan Fay, you get this rough, furry piece of wood, and I always feel bad because we cut down trees, but it's like you take this piece of wood that used to be. I mean, I love the outdoors, so trees to me, it's one of my favorite things to look at. But, so I always felt bad about
turning him into a chair.
But then you look at the finished product, like, all right, it's beautiful again. So it's like, the whole process that you go through to get there, just, I don't know, it's very rewarding, and especially working for yourself and not having to answer to a boss other than, my wife.
And Emily.
Emily keeps us in line around here. Yeah.
Have you, so I want to just go back to that period of time between 17 and 21 that you are in this environment where you miss out on all those coping skills that you come back and have to deal with. Have you, or are you still in the process of reconciling with that time?
I've gotten way better. So my coping mechanisms up until recently was anger. So it's like, you know me, Emily knows me, Jeff. I mean, he gets it more because he's been in this. Yeah. Mike gets it, but like everyone knows, it's John. He's a nice guy. He's happy. He's always trying to help, whatever. But there was a point of time where, if you breathed on me the wrong way, it was, I went from 0 to 100 in a split second. I mean, I've more fights, I've broken more, punched more holes in walls and broken doors and all that stuff. Like when my oldest son was little, like that was still crazy. So it's, those coping mechanisms were learned the hard way, and they were learned through therapy, and they were learned through just really dedicating yourself to improving. Because my dad was a very angry guy. It's the same thing, a drop of a dime, he'd lose his mind. So I didn't want to be that way. And like, there was one time I got real mad, and Max was maybe 4. And I just saw it in his eyes. I'm like, he's scared. He's really afraid. And like, then I would notice anytime I get upset, like you look at my eyes, because my therapist was like, your whole body changes when you get angry, especially your eyes. I'm like, oh, okay. So like, for me, once somebody told me something like that, that's something I could start focusing on and working through these things and learning like coping skills that I should have learned a long time ago. But now, I can put up with a lot before I get upset. So yeah, I mean, my wife hasn't tried to leave me in a few years, so I guess that's a plus.
We'll come back. We'll ask you again in a few more years. What would you say to a vet dealing with PTSD right now, whether in the scope of just general living or picking up, a
Just gotta
hobby?
first and foremost, you got to get some therapy. That's the biggest thing. And the VA has come a long way. A lot of them are partnering up now with hospitals like the Worcester VA. It used to be like an outpatient clinic where you could go get blood work and pick up your pills and get your physical. But now they just merged with UMass. So it's like you go to their facility and it's amazing. And their mental health department's a lot better. But what I would say is if you're struggling with PTSD, you're not alone. There's one thing you can count on is other veterans to help. So if you feel, one great example would be Chuck. Do you remember Chuck? Charles
Yes.
Strong? Yeah.
Yep.
I still talk to him almost weekly.
Yeah.
And you can always count on other vets and they'll help you. So, for him, he would give me some advice about what I should do with this or that. But the biggest thing I'd say is therapy, keeping your network, keep an open mind to your network, because you're not sure who you're going to meet that is going to benefit your life and you'll benefit their life. But another thing also is, picking up a hobby, something that for me, it's like when my mind starts to run, I get to look at Mike all day, but I would either go out and I'd shoot arrows at a target, or I'd do something like that until I found woodworking. So now if you can just occupy your free time with something that you enjoy, it can't just be I'm gonna bake cakes, because that would be something to keep my hands occupied. You got to find something
Plus, then you eat the cake and it's gone, and you have to start all over again.
That's a good one, I guess. But yeah, it's just working with your hands, and just I don't know what it is about that kind of trade that
I don't either. Well,
so
I mean,
many vets.
it keeps your mind going for sure. I mean, I told you my grandfather was a Korean, he was Air Force and fought in Korea, and my entire life he was, he was a wood carver, always sitting there carving wood, building model aircraft, always working with his hands, and it keeps your brain from atrophying and keeps you thinking about that one thing that you're focused on, and getting away from the invasive thoughts.
I think part of that too is if you're a veteran and this is you, don't take offense to it, but I noticed as soon as I got out of like being a Marine and being a veteran, like when I left that, because for a long time I thought I was going to help vets. Like I thought that would be my role, was to, I started a big Facebook group, and like I was searching for jobs to work with veterans, because I felt abandoned when I first got out. I was like, I don't want anybody to feel like that again, so there was a lot of outreach. I did a lot of stuff in Worcester in the area with veterans, but once I left that, and I found the school and I started focusing more on myself and what I like, and left the veteran status behind, that's when I realized that I did a lot of growing there. Because the guys that I personally know that I served with, or that I was in therapy with, that stick on that veteran mentality, they get the hats, the stickers, the don't stand behind me guys, I need to face this, like if you keep that mentality, you're never going to change.
It's true.
You know what I mean?
Shed
you gotta
something.
exactly. So I think that's why trades are good for veterans, because you're picking up a new thing. You're meeting a group of new people. So it's like, you're shedding your skin.
You're shedding skin. You're starting a new phase of your life too.
Right. Yeah.
Well, that's the other question, Meg. I get it that you're always going to be a Marine, right?
Yeah.
But would you say that you're more a furniture maker now than you were your 4-5 tours and overseas?
Well, I'm a little heavier too. If I couldn't run. So, if someone asked me,
you're not going to run. You're not going to be a marathon runner, is what you're saying.
I don't know if I could run to the end of the street, to be honest with you. I get tired watching people run. So.
Me too. Seriously.
But no, I think if I identify as anything, it would definitely be a furniture maker over a Marine these days. Sure.
Well, I mean, you said you thought you were going to be helping veterans, and you are, and I want to comment to that. My admiration for parlaying your experience into putting so much focus on supporting other veteran-owned businesses, neighbors here, the project you're working on for what is it called? Joint operations.
All those display cases. And that's the other cool thing too, is that So eventually, if Mike lets us, we're going to teach here. And I would like to bring in like veterans, you know, maybe like a stepping stone into the 3-month intensive, or, you know, something into North Bennett Street School, but just to get more vets or whoever. I just want to help. So
God, you could start with just a
yeah.
carving club.
Right. I'm not
Although
a good
you don't
carver.
carve.
No. We'll use Emily. She'll be our carver.
I do not want to see the spoon that you're going to carve. No.
Well, that's what they were joking about.
I know.
Like, start carving a spoon. Just whittle a piece of wood. But the yeah, I think, you know, eventually we'll start giving back here. I definitely, and I want to do it as much as I can. So if I can figure out a way in the next 5 years, maybe even scholarships or something in North Bennett Street School, whatever. I definitely want to give back. I think that's one of the bigger parts about finding a good balance with yourself, is if you give back to the community, whether it's, you know, coat drive for a shelter, or, you know, something in your field. Just, you have to give part of yourself out there with no return. You know, it helps with your inner self.
Yep.
So,
Give back for sure. Our guests, please ask John or myself any questions that you have. And while we're giving you that time, I'm going to read something that someone has chimed in with. It is so inspiring to hear about your story and how therapy has helped you, and really helps me understand its importance with my own transition out of the military. Thank you, Nicole. And the USS Constitution Museum is always here and open for hosting carving events. Maybe you should link up with them.
Yeah.
So if anybody has questions, feel free to ask us. And I'm also going to see if they'll come around. Where's Jeff? Where is he?
He went downstairs.
Oh, all right. I just want to give a shout out to the other woodworkers that are in this space where John's business is. So John's business is Gunner Gray Furniture Fusion.
Yeah.
What? Where is he?
She's trying to escape.
I know, it's okay. She'll come back. She always comes back. Mike Turner, who's behind me, who will come up in a minute. His business is Wildwood Custom. And Jeff Woods, wherever he is, Jeff Woods Furniture and Design.
Yep.
And then Emily Goff is here. And you're not all graduates of the same year, but
One semester ahead. Yeah. So
Yeah.
Mike, Jeff, and Emily all graduated.
Yeah,
together.
John's older.
Yeah.
As you can tell.
Cool.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm not the oldest. Who's the oldest?
I am.
Mike.
Oh, are you?
Well, yeah, we're all born the same year, but I'm the oldest by a few
Even
months.
Emily?
No.
No.
Emily's the baby.
All right. Well, as they're coming up, I have a question from Gerald. Did you use VRE, and if so, what was your experience? Any advice for navigating the process?
Vocational rehab, I would assume.
Oh, Voc Rehab.
Yeah.
Is that what you're?
I think so.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
VRE, is that Voc Rehab? Yeah,
You
that's what
all
I used.
know. You
Yeah.
you use Voc
I don't know if
Rehab.
that's the nomenclature, whatever it
It's
is. but-
VOC, what I've known it at.
Yeah.
Yes, Voc Rehab.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Voc Rehab, if you're going to go to North Bennett Street School and you don't plan to do any further education, like go to a different school, is definitely the way to go.
Yeah.
'Cause I mean,
I put your tools
there's like,
together
yeah,
for
like
you.
look at all the.
Oh, yeah.
They
Oh,
pay
yeah.
for everything. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I got so many cool things from Voc Rehab. If you're going to do it, that would be the program I'd use for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Because they buy all your material and all your tools. So,
Yeah. Let me grab another question here. Remember the Great Gate on Upland in Cambridge?
Mhm.
You sent me several design sketches. So natural and tree-like, and that's the one we chose. Do you remember making these sketches? And why was the last one so different? Okay, that's a lengthy question. I'll pass
no,
that
I
along
know.
to.
That's Dorothy. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
She's the woman I built the gate for.
Oh,
Yeah.
the gate. I
The gate.
remember
That was
the
like
gate.
my first big like abstract project. I guess you'd say.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. It goes back to being in the woods, like the reeds blowing in the wind, like if you're sitting by a swamp or something like that. Just to me, that's peaceful. So,
Mhm.
you know, when there's no chaos around you. Hi, Dorothy.
Hi, Dorothy.
Yeah.
From my colleague Brian McGrath, thank you for your candor, John. Much of Brian's role lately has revolved around supporting students' health and wellness. Any quick advice as to how staff faculty at NBSS can best empower students to succeed and stay uplifted?
You guys did a great job. Really did. The one thing I would just poke out there would be business. So, like, you know, for me, it was a little different because I ran a business before, so I didn't need a lot of guidance in that area, but you know, if you bring in like me, Jeff, Mike, Emily, we'll do like a little class or something on how to run a business. Because a lot of the guys that came in, you'd ask them questions and they're like, I don't do social media. You're like, well,
You have to.
in this world, if you're just starting out, like, you know, it'd be good to have something like that. I didn't attend the business program that Brian runs, so maybe all of that was in there. Sorry, Brian, if it was, but I didn't do that, so I don't know, but yeah.
Yeah, okay. Something from another attendee. I attended a Furniture Society conference where a former female helicopter pilot told us that she learned woodworking while on duty in Iraq because there was a wood shop fitted out by the military. How prevalent was that? Woodworking overseas? No?
Maybe in different branches.
Maybe a different,
Okay.
maybe in a different
Yeah.
Not for the Marine,
Not-
not in
no.
your
different scenario,
experience.
timeline. Maybe.
No, like we
Yeah.
stayed at an example. We stayed at Abu Ghraib prison, so that was like the big. You know, they had KBR, whoever, every form of American aid was there. Our Air Force, you know, I don't think the Coast Guard was there, but like all the big contractors, everybody. So like they had this huge chow hall, and you could go there, you could eat steak, and like I went in there one day with a couple buddies. We were eating crab legs and steak, and our company gunnery sergeant walked in and was like, "Get them in," yeah, you know. So then we went back and we had to eat MREs. So it's like we didn't have amenities like everybody else did. They wanted to keep us miserable. That was like their goal.
Let's see. I'm sorry, everyone. I got my phone interrupted. Thanks, John. Really appreciated hearing your experience as a vet and therapy coming from a wannabe woodworker and full-time therapist. I see a number of vets. From another guest, please reflect on going vocational as an adult versus going as a high school student. Oh, well,
Yeah.
it is obvious that your experience was positive. Would it have been if you did not have your military experience? Going to North Bennett after?
I don't know. I
It's
don't
a
know what I
tough thing
would.
to
Yeah.
answer.
I don't know if I would have. I don't know what I would have done if I didn't go into the military. I'd probably be not here for sure.
Yeah.
To be somewhere else. That's for sure.
All right, I think that's all of our questions. So will you pals come around here? Or you need to show some face.
Group hug.
I'm forcing the other shopmates to come here and show their beautiful faces for everyone. There you go.
It's Emily.
Everyone.
Emily.
AKA Ham.
There's Jeff Woods. Jeff Woods, also a Marine.
Get in here.
And here's the main
Come
guy
on, Mike
right
Turner.
here. There he is.
And there's everybody. And Link.
Get Link.
And I think that's our program. And John, thank you for sharing your story. Yeah,
For sure.
and thanks everyone for letting me crash your space here. And we'll see you next time.